going to turn it over to you and let you talk about where did you grow up?
You know, that was a great icebreaker, I have to say. I grew up over in the West Side in a small town, once not known until the Seattle Seahawks and some of them moved out into that area, called Maple Valley, Washington.
Oh, I know Maple Valley.
Yeah, and it was unincorporated, and was a very small community. It was a great place to grow up as a child. You knew everybody in the schools. From K through 12, we knew everybody, and it was a lot of fun. It was a good experience.
So that was something that you really appreciated about, was that rootedness.
I did, and the strength of the community came from the families and the support behind the school district at the time, and we were in competition with sports. Of course, we pretty much always came in last because we didn't have a real big school, but that was okay. It was the love of the sport. It was the ability to interact with each other and to learn to win and enjoy that, but lose gracefully as well. It was a good life.
So the informal activities that went along with that school, were there some interesting things that you were involved in?
You know, yes. In my era, at the age that I am, it was interesting. In that time, any girls that wanted to be in sports were considered tomboys. So I guess I'm kind of a tomboy in that day. So we didn't have sports for girls, and I always wanted to play baseball, and it was one of those things where I'd take my softball and my mitt to school, and a few other girls would say, "Yeah, let's throw a recess," and all of a sudden we kind of developed this team in the 5th grade. And my dad, who was Parks and Recreation director for years until he died in '77 for the city of Renton, I asked him, aren't there any other girl teams around the area? And he checked King County, he checked all over, he actually checked the state, and there just weren't any organized girls teams. And so we ended up asking, can we play the Little League? Would they play us? And of course they agreed on off games. And they switched to the softball, and we were fast pitch then. Slow pitch didn't even exist. And we actually won the first game with the age group that we played that was our own, and then of course moved up to the next age group, and of course they beat us. But it was all good fun.
Oh, it does sound like fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Very enterprising to get that started. Good for your dad.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, besides that, it sounds like that you had a really good childhood growing up in Maple Valley. Is that where you got your first job?
Yes, I did actually. I was in high school, and I was a telemarketer for a carpet cleaning company during high school. That taught me a lot about communicating with people and talking with them, being transparent, open, honest, explaining who I was and not trying to sneak in the back door. It taught me a lot about people. That was a good first job for me. And then, of course, growing up in a family that had conservative values, and carrying that forward in all of my work from then on. My father was in World War II. Both of my parents went through the Depression. So those conservative values were taught to us, that you aren't entitled to anything. You earn what you get, and you deserve through hard work. And so that carried through into a lot of my work experience thereafter.
Okay. Well, so after school, you've moved on, and you've got some additional education and jobs, and something brought you this direction to Spokane Valley. How did that
Well, my husband's family was from the Deer Park area, and after we got married in '77, we moved over here and purchased 20 acres up north, and it was actually just over the county line into Stevens County, and they didn't have the regulations for building, if you were building your own home, that a lot of counties did. So we were able to actually take the logs off the land and build our own house.
Oh,
and
that's quite an experience itself.
It was. We had 2 babies and moved into it. Didn't have power and water. We were building it as we could afford, and had to learn to cook on a wood cook stove and all that good fun stuff. But what that taught me is that you can do whatever you put your mind to and are willing to put hard work toward. And so then we traveled around a bit after that when the construction trade, he was in construction, kind of went a little bit soft in the '80s. And so we moved around. I ended up getting a position when I was working in Seattle, and we moved the family to Hawaii for a couple of years. And that in itself was an amazing experience to find out what the culture was like in another state. Even though it's the United States, it's a completely different culture.
Yes, it is. The history of Hawaii really
Yes.
changes how that how it feels and how people
Yes.
people operate.
Yeah, and it's very family oriented. Again, back to kind of what
Ohana.
my roots were, and small community where you've got grandparents raising the grandkids while the parents work 2 jobs, both of them a day to just survive because it's so expensive to live there. But they never wavered in their strong family unit. When we came back to Spokane Valley, we've been here since 1998, and when I saw the city form, I really wanted to stay in. I wanted to get involved in keeping that family community strong, even though there's going to be growth, populace-wise, and things change. I'm a firm believer that the family unit is the strength of a community, and I wanted to keep that in mind as I lived here, and even maybe eventually got involved in the city.
So what did prompt you to step out and volunteer to run for office and to take on that responsibility?
Well, I'd worked for the city from 2007 or 2008 to 2015, and I worked for the city manager, deputy city manager originally, and then city manager. And I brought those same conservative, fiscally conservative values into the city because I was always in the private realm, but I carried those into the public realm and helped develop. Matter of fact, they had the budget business plan annual meeting yesterday, and they're using the very same document format that I had created back in 2010 for transparency and for understanding what the budget is. Then when I left, I'm out working at Eastern Washington University now, I wanted to keep my hands involved in the city, and so I applied to become a planning commissioner and was accepted and was the chair for the commission in 2018. So I've got inside and outside experience, and that made me realize, along with my own private experiences throughout my life, managing other people's money, whether it's in the private realm or the public realm, that I could be a voice for the citizens to continue that process, to continue to develop. We are still a young city. So.
Still developing those new traditions. And yeah. Well, this is a good point to turn it over to you for that closing statements. Describe the duties of a city council member, and why should voters choose you to fulfill those responsibilities?
Well, the duties are a little bit different out in Spokane Valley because number one, it's a nonpartisan position. And it's not based on district, your citywide representation. And the duties really for our council are to provide the citizens public safety, good roads, good infrastructure, job growth through economic development, and I believe doing that through the process of a very lean government. And it's the extension of the citizens was what they vote for. They may not want to be on that council dais, but they'll vote for somebody who will do it for them and be their voice. And that's what I believe the duties are and what I intend to do. The reason I believe I'm a good candidate for this is because of my experience. I've got both internal and external of the city, so I'm very well versed in that. But in addition to that, the fiscally conservative values that I've had all my life in all the jobs that I've had and currently am performing, and carry that forward. And I think it's the experience to be able to speak, especially at my age. I've had a lot of life's experiences in that, and I would like to continue to be that voice for the citizens.
Okay. Well, it was very nice to have you here, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in and for being patient with my
That's quite all right.
You can link to the video because everybody will want to see me mess up at the beginning. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.